New cars rarely fail immediately, but are they still right after 3 years of use? The 2026 Paradox machines with only 20,000 to 40,000 kilometers on the clock are already sliding out of their optimal state, shaking at idle burning oil abnormally and losing the original smoothness. This isn't user error. It's the consequence of a clear trend pushing performance to the limit and cutting material costs to the extreme. Recent technical reports are sending a worrying signal the rate of early engine failures is rising even among models once considered reliable. Among them, 6 brands are showing clear signs of deterioration over time, names you need to think twice about before spending in 2026. One quick mechanism: why do engines deteriorate early? Why are newer cars deteriorating faster than expected? It's not your driving, it's how they're designed. Smaller engines, but higher power. Thanks to turbocharging, sounds reasonable, but the cost is heat. Higher temperatures, higher pressures. The combustion chamber is always working near its limits. Under such harsh operating conditions, internal components from pistons and rings to lubricating oil are under greater stress, and wear begins earlier. It's not a fault, it's the default operating state. At the same time, direct fuel injection (GDI) improves fuel control, but removes a natural cleaning mechanism from the engine. No more fuel passing through the intake valves. Carbon starts to accumulate, layer by layer, slowly, until airflow gets restricted. The engine keeps running, but it no longer breathes like it used to. Drivers may not notice immediately, but the engine gradually loses its optimal operating condition. CVT transmissions are also part of this equation. Instead of fixed gears, CVTs rely on continuous friction between belt and pulley to change the gear ratio. Smooth and efficient in the short term, but over time constant friction causes wear and reduces drivetrain efficiency if not perfectly managed. Looked at individually, there's nothing wrong. But when they come together, a small engine turbocharged using GDI paired with a CVT, every component operates near its limit. No safety margin, no room for error. And when errors accumulate, the new car state begins to vanish. This isn't an isolated case. When the same design repeats across multiple models and years of production, it becomes a clear trend. In the next section, we'll examine 6 brands that show this trend most clearly, not through marketing, but through how their cars perform after a few years of use. Brand number 6, Mitsubishi. Not broken, but no longer right. This was once a name synonymous with durability. But by 2026, Mitsubishi faces a different challenge: old platforms, paired with new drivetrains but not truly synchronized. It sounds reasonable, but when the two systems weren't designed to work together from the start, everything begins to fall out of rhythm. The focal point is the CVT. Mitsubishi uses CVTs extensively to optimize cost and fuel efficiency. The problem isn't the CVT itself, it's the conditions under which it must operate. When paired with engines that have modest torque, the transmission has to work harder to keep the car moving smoothly. This means the steel belt is constantly pressed against the pulleys to maintain traction. No gears to rest, no relief periods. Just a repeating cycle, slip, grip, slip again, thousands of times per minute. And friction always generating heat. As temperatures rise, the transmission fluid begins to change properties. Viscosity drops, lubrication and cooling gradually weaken. After roughly 30,000 kilometers, the system still works, but it's no longer as precise as it once was. The belt pressure is no longer optimal. Gear ratios no longer shift cleanly. You don't see a fault, but you feel it. You press the accelerator, the revs climb quickly, but the car doesn't respond immediately. A tiny delay, but repeated every time you accelerate. Over time, that feeling becomes normal, and you forget that the car used to respond faster. Next comes vibration. When the drivetrain operates in a suboptimal state for an extended period, oscillations begin to accumulate. Engine mounts take more load. Dampers lose effectiveness. The result: at a red light, you feel a slight shake through the steering wheel and driver's seat. Not strong, but enough to notice the car is no longer as smooth as it once was. This isn't sudden failure, it's a gradual performance decline, slow but continuous. A mechanic who specializes in Japanese cars puts it bluntly: Mitsubishi cars still run with few random breakdowns, but the issue is they deteriorate faster than usual. After 3 years, the mechanical tightness is gone, and the car becomes noticeably noisier and shakier compared to competitors in the same segment. Mitsubishi isn't making bad cars, but they are making cars that age quickly. In 2026, if you want a driving experience that feels solid and remains durable over the long term, this is a name you need to consider. Carefully think twice before spending. Brand number 5, Infiniti. The problem isn't the hardware. Infiniti, the luxury brand of Nissan, once defined by smoothness and refinement. But in the 2026 tech race, Infiniti is taking a different path, pushing performance through software, rather than mechanical foundations. The problem isn't the engine, it's how it's controlled. To meet increasingly strict emission standards, the ECU is programmed with a lean fuel map at low RPMs. What does that mean? Less fuel, cleaner combustion, but also harder to keep stable. At the same time, the variable valve system and turbo constantly adjust to maintain performance. And here's the key point. These systems don't always mesh perfectly. The ECU has to intervene constantly, adding fuel, adjusting ignition, holding RPM hundreds of times per second. It's an operating state, not absolute stability. When the car is idling, the revs don't stay steady. They fluctuate slightly. The cabin no longer has the quiet calm you expect from a luxury car. During acceleration, especially in the mid-range, you feel very slight hiccups. Not enough to be called a fault, but enough to break the sense of seamlessness. The engine is still powerful, but it's no longer smooth. A diagnostic engineer at a premium service center notes, Infiniti is trying to fix mechanical limitations with software updates. In reality, tuning so close to the limits keeps the engine under constant stress. After 40,000 kilometers, even the tiniest deviations can turn into system faults, reducing the driving experience by up to 30%. A luxury car needs absolute stability and smoothness. But with Infiniti in 2026, you're driving a system that's always self-correcting, just to stay balanced. And when that balance is no longer perfect, the entire experience starts to fracture. Brand number 4. Chrysler cumulative wear from an outdated platform. A brand caught between two eras. While the industry moves toward lightweight materials and flexible platforms, Chrysler still relies on mechanical architectures from years ago. They call it heritage, but from an engineering perspective, it's a limitation. Chrysler's core issue in 2026 is running engines like the Pentastar Vio 6 on an outdated mechanical platform. These platforms weren't designed for today's operating conditions, higher emission standards. Greater operating temperatures, more complex electronic controls. When an old platform must meet these new demands, it's forced to operate beyond its optimal range. And that leads to two clear consequences. First, combustion efficiency drops. The air-fuel mixture is no longer optimal as originally designed. The engine must consume more fuel to produce the same power. After around 2 years of use, fuel consumption can increase 15 to 20% compared to the original specification. Second, cumulative wear. Mechanical deviations, even tiny ones, begin to add up over time. Camshafts, hydraulic lifters, contact surfaces, all endure loads beyond their original design. After 40,000 kilometers, this wear accumulates into gaps, producing characteristic knocking and reducing oil pressure. A Chrysler after 2 years can see fuel consumption rise 15 to 20% over factory figures. The older engine can no longer burn fuel efficiently, draining your wallet mile by mile. Meanwhile, seals and gaskets begin to weaken. Minor leaks appear, oil gradually diminishes. Chrysler isn't facing a major failure, they are being slowed down by their own outdated platform. And when technology can't keep up with new demands, degradation is no longer a possibility, it's inevitable. Brand number 3, Jaguar. Signal deviations in electronic architecture. Jaguar, a brand that still carries the appearance of a true luxury car. But the surface doesn't tell the full story. The answer lies deep in how the systems operate. Today, Jaguar relies heavily on electronics. Everything from fuel and ignition to throttle response passes through a network of sensors and a central controller. In theory, more sensors mean greater precision. In practice, the opposite can happen. When the system becomes too complex, even a tiny deviation and everything starts to glitch. Voltage fluctuates slightly, humidity changes, temperature rises. Sensors begin sending signals that are no longer clean. Not entirely wrong, just slightly off. And that's the problem. The ECU can't distinguish between correct data and noise. It still processes everything as if all readings were accurate. The result, completely incorrect adjustments to fuel mixture and ignition timing. You feel it immediately. You press the accelerator, but the car doesn't surge forward, or worse, it jerks while maintaining a steady speed. The engine no longer understands the driver's intent. The dashboard of a 2026 Jaguar looks like a Christmas tree lit up with check engine and limp mode warnings, even when the hardware itself is perfectly fine. Independent reliability rankings like JD Power and Consumer Reports have consistently placed Jaguar at the bottom tier. Reports state clearly over 60% of issues in new Jaguars are directly linked to electrical systems and control software, not traditional mechanical failures. Buying a 2026 Jaguar is like owning a supercomputer placed in a harsh environment. It's too smart to protect itself, yet too fragile to maintain daily stability. Brand number 2, Genesis, deviations in system calibration. Considered Hyundai's ambitious luxury brand in 2026, Genesis has chosen a clear path: push the numbers. Push performance, push the driving experience. But the problem isn't the hardware. It's in how everything is calibrated. Powerful engines, big turbos, quick transmissions. Each component is fine on its own, but when combined, they're not fully in sync. Calibration isn't optimal. The way the ECU manages the turbo fuel and transmission hasn't reached the precision required. In the mid-range RPM, where the car spends most of its time, the timing deviations start to appear. The turbo spools early. The transmission hasn't reacted yet. The ECU has to intervene constantly. Intake pressure is unstable, always fluctuating. When intake pressure swings, combustion timing goes off. The ECU has to compensate, continuously pushing injector pressure to the limit. Fuel is sometimes too rich, sometimes too lean. Small errors, but repeated thousands of times per minute. The result, mild knock-slight vibrations through the accelerator pedal and a driving feel that isn't seamless. Over time, excess fuel washes into the oil pan, thinning the oil and reducing lubrication. After roughly 30,000 kilometers wear, it accelerates crankshaft bearings and friction surfaces degrade faster than normal. What you notice, the car is powerful but uneven. Acceleration has small stutters, responses lack precision. A vehicle data analyst told me Genesis has good hardware but lacks finesse in system integration. Calibration errors make the car strong on paper but not truly smooth in operation. Genesis doesn't lack power. It lacks refinement in controlling that power. Buying a 2026 Genesis, you're paying for horsepower on paper, but in reality you get a machine still testing its limits. Brand number 1 Nissan, the Danger Zone of 2026. And the name at the top of the 2026 Danger Zone list is Nissan. Once a symbol of Japanese reliability, it now faces a full-scale quality crisis. Not just a single component failing, but a system-wide breakdown. The Xtronic CVT, even after multiple generations of upgrades, remains the Achilles heel. Around 40,000 to 60,000 kilometers, oil pressure becomes unstable. The steel belt slips slightly on the pulleys, and friction generates tiny metal particles that clog the control valves, causing jerks or loss of power when climbing hills. At the same time, the small displacement turbo engines suffer from oil consumption issues. Worn piston rings lose their ability to scrape oil, letting it enter the combustion chamber. Carbon builds up on the pistons, performance drops, and you constantly need to top up oil. The electrical system meant to compensate for weak mechanical components is itself unstable. A host of sensors send inaccurate signals to the ECU, causing the car to over or under fuel, putting stress on both the engine and transmission. The result, uneven operation and imprecise responses. Reports from Consumer Reports and international consumer protection organizations consistently show that complaints related to CVTs and overall Nissan durability are over 40% higher than the industry average. A veteran mechanic remarked, "The car rarely fails outright, but deterioration is obvious. After 3 years, the steering feels loose, the engine noisy, and the transmission sluggish. You feel like you're driving a 10-year-old car even though it has only 30,000 kilometers. The common thread among all 6 brands isn't catastrophic mechanical failure or dramatic breakdowns. It's how these systems degrade over time. They're designed to shine in the showroom, but they lack the mechanical safety margins to stay truly reliable over the long haul." 2 inside the workshop, the consequences of silent degradation. 6 brands. 6 types of degradation. 6 hidden costs you don't notice until the car enters the workshop. Step into a 2026 garage and the mechanic says, "Cars are coming in sooner than before, not because of accidents. Many aren't completely broken, but they no longer run right." Beneath the glossy exterior lies a harsh reality: carbon buildup caked on valves choking airflow. Piston rings no longer sealing engine oil, burning slightly. CVTs wearing down hydraulic valves, responding slowly. Sensors sending inaccurate signals, the ECU, straining yet still imprecise. Recent reliability surveys confirm the average number of faults per vehicle is rising, mostly from engines and electronics. Costs spare, no one carbon cleaning can run 2 to 5 million VND, CVT repairs 20 to 40 million VND, and oil consumption increases operating costs by 10 to 20%. Vehicle value also drops. Many models depreciate faster than expected, directly reflecting trust in long-term durability. The scariest part: you can't see it with your eyes. Degradation happens silently with every throttle input, every kilometer. You only realize one thing: you are paying for that decline day by day, trip by trip. Are you willing to pay the price to keep a car running that no longer drives like it did when new? In 2026, the line between a tech bargain and a mechanical burden is thinner than ever. The 6 brands we've reviewed aren't bad, but they lack the safety margin needed for the first 100,000 kilometers. Buy cars with logic, prioritize reliable engines, avoid over-pushed performance, and always check replacement parts. If you've ever experienced early engine vibration or oil consumption on newer models, share your story in the comments to warn the community. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive technical investigations. See you in the next video.